So I've been putting off making a Duolingo video for some time now, even though a lot of you have actually asked for it. And the reason is pretty simple. I don't just have thoughts on Duolingo. I've got some pretty strong views on the bigger thing it sits inside of, right? The education system, human development, and what we're actually trying to build in people. So I'll give you the headline up front. Duolingo is a brilliant product, but Duolingo is not the future of education. And just to be clear from the start, this is not a Duolingo valuation video. This is a category thesis video. Because the Duolingo bull narrative is increasingly tied to a much bigger claim. That it's a bet on the future of education itself. And I think that claim needs to be challenged. So my view is pretty simple. In the context of education, gamification is a method. Agency is the goal. Duolingo is world-class at the method. It makes learning engaging, it makes it habitual, it gets people to come back. But the future of education is not just about making legacy learning more fun and on a phone. The future of education is about building humans with high agency. And I'm not saying this from the outside. I was what is called unschooled before I went to university. I skipped the entire traditional 12-year school system. I then did my A-levels in under 8 months and went on to complete my BCom and honours degrees. So I've seen this from a slightly different angle than most. I've seen that the standard education timeline is not some fixed law of nature. A lot of legacy education is really about pacing, compliance, and syllabus delivery. And that's not the same as building capability. Now, just to be precise here, I'm not saying that my path should be copied or better than others or anything like that. My path is not the blueprint. I'm saying it was a kind of prototype that proved to me that the constraints people think are fixed in education often aren't. Now, before I go further, let me preempt a few obvious objections. I'm not anti-Duolingo, I'm not anti-tech, and I'm not anti-academics. Subjects still matter. Technology absolutely matters. My point is narrower, and I think far more important. A great app is not the same thing as a complete education system. If a system improves delivery, but doesn't improve the human outcome, we've made the experience smoother, but it's not necessarily better. Because to me, the question is not can we deliver school content better on an app? The question is what kind of human does the system produce by 18? Does it produce someone who can think independently, regulate themselves, manage their energy, manage their money, direct their own learning? Can they adapt under pressure? Or does it produce someone who's mainly good at completing tasks inside a structured system? That distinction is everything. And this is where I think a lot of education debate is framed wrong. We spend too much time arguing about content and not enough time defining the human outcome. So we know that most school systems are optimized for content coverage, test scores, standardization, and admin simplicity. But real life rewards something completely different. Real life rewards things like judgment, self-direction, emotional regulation, communication, good financial behavior, and execution. So in my view, the future of education is not mainly a curriculum problem. It's a human development problem. You see, the best systems in the future won't just ask, did the student complete the lesson? They'll ask, can they focus? Can they self-correct? Can they handle setbacks? Can they solve real problems? Can they execute without being chased? This is a completely different target. And once you change the target, everything else changes. Now, to be fair to Duolingo, because this is where I think a lot of people miss the point, Duolingo gets something extremely important right. It proves that learning can be low friction, enjoyable, depending on who prefers the app, repeatable, and habit forming. This is a huge achievement. Most education products are content rich and behavior poor. Duolingo It's behavior rich. It understands things like streaks, progress loops, small wins, identity reinforcement, and consistency psychology. In simple terms, Duolingo solved a real problem: how to get people to show up and keep learning. And honestly, most education systems haven't even solved that. So when I challenge Duolingo, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm saying Duolingo may be a powerful component of the future of education, but it's just not the full stack. The easiest way for me to explain my view is like this. Saying Duolingo is the future of education is a bit like saying a treadmill is the future of health. A treadmill can be excellent. It can absolutely improve your life. But health is much bigger than a treadmill. And it's the same thing here. Duolingo is a very good tool. But education is a much bigger human system. Now, to be fair, I know not everyone literally believes Duolingo replaces schools. That's not what I'm challenging. I'm challenging the direction of the narrative. The idea that app-based content delivery is the core bet on the future of education. I don't think it is, because a product can be amazing at one part of learning and still be far away from solving education as a full development system. That's the key distinction. A lot of people are taking a true statement, Duolingo is excellent at engagement, and stretching it into a much bigger statement. Therefore, it's the future of education. I don't think that follows. Here's the core mistake in my view. People see a successful app like Duolingo and assume the end game is that schooling will be on a phone. I don't buy that, especially not for K through 12. I do not think the future of K through 12 education is a paid app on a cell phone. It can't be, because K through 12 is not just knowledge transfer. It's where humans are developing socially, emotionally, psychologically, behaviorally. And that kind of development needs human interaction. Teachers, coaches, peers, accountability, real-time feedback, guided correction. A phone app can certainly support that. It cannot replace that. And this is where people sometimes accuse this view of being anti-tech. It's not at all. I'm not saying less tech. I'm saying the winning model is probably human-led and tech amplified, not human replaced. Let's look at aviation, for example. Autopilot transformed flying, but we didn't remove pilots. We changed the role of the pilot. The system became better because technology handled what technology is good at, and humans focused on what humans are good at. I think education should evolve in the same direction. Let tech handle the things like measurement, personalization, feedback timing, and pattern recognition. Let the humans handle the trust, the motivation, the judgment, social development, and real-time feedback. So what does the future of education look like if we actually had to optimize for agency? Well, in my view, by the time someone leaves school at 16 to 18, they should leave far more capable than the average student coming out of a legacy system. They should understand themselves deeply, both physically, mentally, and even emotionally and financially. That means education should include real training in things like self-experimentation, to use the scientific method on themselves, from hypothesis to test it, measure it, review the results, and adjust. I mean, can you imagine if I was a student, I could find out what sleep schedule gives me the best focus, what foods sit well with me, when do I do my best work, how does exercise affect my mood and cognition? That is practical intelligence. Another domain would be self-regulation, right? How do I manage stress, distraction, impulses, achieve consistency, and manage my time? There's also the big domain of financial agency. As a student, I should be able to leave school understanding good financial behaviors like budgeting, saving, debt, compounding, risk, beyond just definitions, but real lived practice. There's also self-direction. Can I set goals, break them down, execute, review, and adapt without external pressure? This is the kind of education that produces powerful adults. Now, when I say agency, I don't mean vague self-help language. I mean measurable behaviors. You see, if it can't be measured, it can't be taught properly. So by agency, I mean things like attention control, execution consistency, emotional regulation, self-correction, and good financial behavior. For example, don't just teach me time management. I want to measure whether I can plan a week, follow the plan, review what failed, and improve next week. You see, that's measurable. That's something that's trainable, and that's something that's real. This is exactly like strength training. Saying build agency without measurement is like saying get stronger without tracking your reps, load, frequency, or progression. It sounds nice, but it doesn't build anything. If we want agency, we need protocols, feedback loops, and progression, just like any other serious system. And now here's where I think the real future gets much bigger than most people realize. If we are serious about building high agency humans, then we need better data on how humans actually learn and develop. These are not just test scores. I mean real behavioral and developmental data. How attention changes over time, how habits form, how sleep affects cognition, how stress affects learning, how teaching styles affect outcomes, and how environment can shape performance. Now, obviously, and this is critical, this has to be done properly. Ethically, with consent, anonymized data, and tied to real outcomes. But if it is done well, the platform becomes unbelievably valuable. Because now you're not just delivering content, you're building a system that learns how humans learn. And that creates a much deeper moat. You get better teaching delivery, better interventions, better personalization, and better long-term outcomes that actually serve the learner. And there's even optionality beyond education here, because if a platform develops a real insights into human learning and development, properly anonymized and handled ethically, that data, that knowledge, could end up being utilized far beyond schools. The point is not to overstate that. The point is the platform layer becomes strategically important. Now, this is where I think Duolingo is structurally limited in the future I'm describing. Duolingo is excellent at the individual habit formation, the app-based repetition, and gamified learning loops. But high agency education requires something much harder: context. It requires the learning environment itself, human interaction, peers, accountability, emotional moments, right? Decision-making under pressure, and real-world application. A lot of the highest value education signals happen around the lesson, not just in the lesson. So it's not just, did the student complete the exercise or task? But it's asking, did they follow through? Did they handle failure well? Did they apply it in real life? Did they self-correct? That's hard to capture in an app-only model. Okay, so for me, Duolingo sits in the same category as something like protein powder in nutrition. Useful? Yes. Scalable? Yes. Can it genuinely help a lot of people? Absolutely. But is it a full diet? No. Apps are part of the future of education. They're just not the whole future. And again, to be fair, Duolingo could still play a very meaningful role in this future. I think Duolingo's biggest contribution may be that it taught the world how to build behaviorally intelligent learning products. That matters a lot. In fact, if future schools and learning systems are built properly, they should probably borrow heavily from Duolingo in areas like motivation design, progression systems, habit loops, feedback timing, and user experience. So Duolingo may not be the future of education itself, but it may be one of the best design references we have for building it. And if we're serious about changing education, we also need to change what we measure, because whatever a system measures, it optimizes. Right now, education systems measure compliance, test performance, and content recall. A future system optimized for agency would measure things like attention control, right? Can the student focus? Energy management, covering things like food, sleep, and exercise. Emotional regulation, right? Responses to setbacks. And good financial behaviors, budgeting, saving. Execution, can they plan and follow through? Self-correction, do they review and adapt? And communication, can they think and explain clearly? This is a completely different dashboard. And in my view, it's much closer to what real life actually rewards. And now I just want to address another objection to this view, which is I'm not saying subjects don't matter, right? Math matters, writing matters, science matters, history matters. I'm saying that the subjects are tools, and agency is the thing that determines whether those tools get used well. A bigger tool shed doesn't help if the builder can't plan, decide, or execute. So yes, we keep the subjects, but teach them in service of capability, not just compliance. So my view is simple. Duolingo is a brilliant product. It may be one of the most important learning products of this era. But Duolingo is not the future of education, at least not in the way that phrase is usually used. The future of education is human-led, tech-integrated, data-informed, and optimized for agency. Duolingo may be a part of that future, but the real prize is much bigger than a paid learning app. The real prize is building humans who can direct their own lives. And a business with that vision is something I would bet on.